From the Vatican, Misha and Dianne are watching Santa Barbara, week 127. Welcome to week 127 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. The Pope will be joining us later. On Canon, we saw Priscilla Morrill, who of course is Mother Isabel, and we saw Russell Johnson, who played that voice actor that did the fake voice of Cece for Gina's tape. And then I remembered where we saw Chuck McCann. It was actually on the season finale of Knots Landing that we'd watched, season 10, the final episode. And then in season 11, season premiere, he is once again the manager of the building that Paige is living in, which is paid for by the Sumner Group. We're in Firenze now, the city of Florence, and we have yet to see Marla Gibbs or Marcello Armanti.
Victoria discovers that her business manager has stolen all the money out of her personal account too, because he had her power of attorney. And Mason once again asks Julia to take on Victoria's case.
We'll be joined later by Pope Leo XIV. Eden intercepts a message from Victoria to Mason at the Orient Express and finds Victoria down at the beach bar waiting for Mason. And Eden says to Victoria, "Cruz doesn't want you anymore." Of course, Victoria protests that she's not here for that she's had some financial setbacks. As Eden leaves, Victoria doubles over in pain, and when Mason finally arrives for his appointment, he finds Victoria lying on the floor of the beach bar. Meanwhile, Cruz contemplates giving Eden her gift that he had wrapped for her. And when he does show up at her place, instead of giving her the gift, he gives her back the watch that she gave him at Christmas. So she was thinking things were moving forward. She had a nice little talk with Mason about that. But in fact, Cruz is throwing out the anchor again to slow things down.
Another moment of disappointment, not only for Eden, but for all of the fans who have been rooting for them throughout the whole show.
Yep. Are we rooting for Mason and Julia or Mason and Victoria?
Well, I kind of like Mason and Julia together. Mm-hmm. They're both lawyers. They actually have a lot in common. I see them together.
I feel like maybe this collapse is going to lead Mason to take her to the hospital, and he'll find out accidentally that she's pregnant from that. Mm-hmm. And then maybe because Mason and Eden, Mason said he's rooting for Cruz and Eden, maybe he'll try to cover up the fact that Victoria's pregnant with Cruz's baby, and maybe even go so far as to say it's his, just for some period of time until it's born, because it'll be obvious that she starts showing, and he'll realize no, she can't go back to acting. So
yeah, it's also, I haven't seen the series. You've already watched it, so you probably know how these things progress more. But
I remember a couple things about Mason and Victoria and the baby. But,
okay.
Basically one thing, but I don't remember how long it goes on for or how it plays out. So.
I was going to say this would be a good opportunity for them if they wanted to abandon the baby storyline and have Victoria do something else, because they often will very conveniently have miscarriages. But it sounds like, from what you're telling me, they are committed to this, so we will see where it goes.
Well, I don't know if this is a memory or something else, but I'm thinking, what if Mason thinks this is a way to get the Cece's firstborn inheritance by pretending he's the father of Victoria's baby if it turns out to be a boy? Yeah. Like, that may be something, I remember or not. I remember in the future at some point Mason does try for that, so. Yeah, all right, that's it for the Cruz and Eden and Victoria and Mason segments of this episode. And the Pope will be joining us later, but right now we're at the Coliseum watching Santa Barbara. We are here in Assisi at the Church of St. Francis, and we are still waiting for the Pope to join us, so we'll move ahead with the podcast. So Carolyn and Lionel are having lunch or breakfast at the Orient Express, and Gus comes in, and Lionel invites Gus to join them, and Gus says, I had breakfast 3 hours ago. He still is very annoyed with the just very existence of Lionel, it seems. Hello, the Pope hasn't come back to us yet, so we're at the Colosseum looking for Marcello Armanti, but we haven't met anyone that knows him. Gus complains to Carolyn that Alice was trying to reach her several times last night and couldn't. Now, presumably, this wasn't after Alice talked to Carolyn, because Alice had already said, oh, we'll go on alone. So I wonder if maybe it was before, and Gus finally said to Alice, oh, just tell her we're going to go on our own.
Yeah.
So, but really, they knew Carolyn was working at the homeless, feed the homeless thing in a unfinished construction with no phone. And then they went to the yacht to call Alice immediately, and they were on the waterfront. So that was probably the closest phone. So I don't think it's really Carolyn could really be at fault there.
No.
And then later Alice says, oh, I don't think you like Gus very much. And she ends up saying that she knew Gus when Alice was born. And then later Jane says, oh, Gus seems to yell at you a lot for someone who doesn't know. And then Carolyn reveals to Jane, oh, I knew of Gus when I was dating Cece. I feel like Jane and Alice are going to start talking and find some holes in this sort of paved over story that Carolyn tells. So I think that may start to fall apart soon.
Yeah, I think we're working up to the big reveal.
Yeah. We're in Pompeii, still looking for Marcello. No luck yet. We're here in Venice to continue this episode. We have been diligently looking for anyone who knows where we could find Marcello Armanti, and so far, no luck yet. And the Pope will be joining us later. Right now, let's continue on with the what I call the Lockridge storyline. Brian and Jane are talking about their various Christmas gifts, and Jane talks Brian into opening the gift from Pearl, and it is Pearl's childhood coin collection, which Brian was never even allowed to touch as a kid. So this seems to touch Brian. And then Brian talks Jane into not returning the blouse that Carolyn gave her. And Jane agrees to that. She tells, Carolyn sees her wearing it and says, oh, I thought you were going to return that. And she says, oh, I changed my mind. I returned too much stuff. So that makes Carolyn happy. Not happy is Alice when she walks in on Brian and Jane about to kiss. So I think we had predicted maybe that Brian and Jane might end up hooking up at the time Alice was with Paul. That may be what's happening there. Maybe, kind of not really a triangle, because Brian's already told Alice he's moving on from her. So that's a bit of an opening for Paul. Yeah. Pearl's, of course, pining away for Kelly, and there's the potential of Pearl and Courtney if he's gotten over being freaked out by her being a murderer. So those were some potentials. Don't forget also Brick is single, so he's looks like he's with Santana at this time, but who knows? Nothing's really solidified there, I don't think. So that is it for that bit, and I can't remember what Gus does next, so we'll have to do that at the next stop. All right, we're still looking for Marcello. We'll see you somewhere else in Italy. We're on the Isle of Capri now. No sign of Marcello Armanti yet, and the Pope hasn't gotten back to us about appearing on the podcast. All right, so we're here in Pisa to continue our fabulous episode. Gus and Alice are talking, and Gus tells Alice he really doesn't want her being with Brian because he's white, and Alice says that his thinking is old-fashioned, and then they start talking about Lionel being Alice's guardian, and Gus says, your place is with me, and Alice says, eventually, and he says, eventually nothing. So I think he wants Alice to be with him immediately. So we'll see what he tells Lionel about changing guardianship for her. And that is the end of episode 615, Monday, December 29, 1986. And I forgot to say, the Pope will be with us in a minute for our sit-down interview about his favorite soap opera, Santa Barbara. See you in a few seconds.
Welcome to Florence. We are standing in front of a statue of David to the next portion of this episode, our big interview with the Pope. As 1986 draws to a close, we are about to start our interview with the Pope. He set aside 3.5 hours with us to talk about his favorite television show, Santa Barbara, or as they call it here, Santa Barbarino. And Diane gave me for our anniversary in Venice this Universal Studios tour hat. So take that off in preparation for our guest. Hang on one second. Cardinal Sardici. He's not the comment. All right, the Pope will not be here. We'll see you next time when we watch episode 616 of Santa Barbara. Bye-bye.
And Cruz and I, if we're going to make things work, we've got to take first things first, I guess.
It's going to take a lot of patience.
You know me, patience of a saint.
Yeah, Mount St. Helens, maybe.
Buongiorno, Santa Barbarinos. We have watched episode 616 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, December 30th, 1986, and was originally slated to air Monday. What day? We're shifted by one. Was originally supposed to air Monday, December 29th. So we'll see if New Year's Day is shifted by a day. I don't think a week is enough for them to restructure that. It is week 27. That is episode 616. And Gus tells Carolyn that he has found a job at the beach bar and that Alice is going to move in with him. Carolyn is angry and says that she and Alice have plans to go shopping for the same sweater that she bought Jane. Carolyn and Lionel talk to Alice, but Alice says Gus is her only relative, so she's going to move with him. So this causes Carolyn to consider telling Alice the truth, that she is her mother, to try to stop her. Alice is not that pleased at the lousy apartment that Gus shows her. She does her best to hide it from Gus, but the kitchen is just not even a separate room. There's just a curtain there, and the kitchen is a hot plate and a tiny, tiny fridge. So, and in fact, he calls it an ice box, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it was an ice box and not a plug-in refrigerator. Gus surprises Alice with a sweater that he bought her, but it is not the expensive one that Carolyn had bought Jane, but a quite cheap one that is somewhat disappointing to Alice.
Mm-hmm. She's gotten a little bit used to better things since living with Lionel.
Mm-hmm. But he tells her, don't worry, we're just going to be here for a week or two till my first paychecks come, and then I will be able to upgrade our apartment. So they go down to the beach bar to talk to the man who hired Gus, but the man says that the orders from high up came saying that they had already hired someone else. And Gus says, I think what really happened is you found out I used to be in prison and you reneged on your offer. So by the reactions of the actor playing the beach bar manager, it's not clear if that's true or not. I mean, it may well have come down from on high. Mm-hmm. This is just probably a one-shot actor, so he probably wasn't given much backstory. I'm not sure if he knew how to react to that, but he stayed pretty neutral, probably, so that it could go either way. Of course, Gus, as we know, is likely to interpret things in the worst way every time. So. Gus tells Alice to go back to the Lockridge mansion temporarily. I think he says for one night, but he realizes that it's all kind of not, come together as he's hoped. So I don't know how long that will last, because Lionel seemed to be, on board with whatever Alice wanted. So. Carolyn shows up and is surprised that Alice has moved out, but tells Gus that she's going to tell Alice everything. To which Gus replies, everything? So, presumably, that refers to him leaving, her leaving the baby with Gus when it was very young. I'm sure Carolyn can spin it in some way, but I don't know. I think Alice will be happy to have a mother, even if she's a little annoyed at Carolyn for some of the things. I imagine that will happen in the next episode. Lionel tells Julia that he could tell that she seems to be a bit jealous about Victoria and Mason. I think it's clear, very clear from this episode that Julia is interested in Mason.
Yes.
Which Minx had kind of seen through. Mason takes Victoria to the hospital, and she lies when the intake nurse asks her if she's pregnant, and then makes it clear to the doctor that under no circumstances is Mr. Capwell to know that she is pregnant. The nurse almost immediately blabs out loud that Victoria's ultrasound is just fine in the middle of the public thing. I mean, this is interesting because we saw the doctor chat to the nurse. Mason wasn't too close by. I think the doctor should have taken that opportunity to remind the nurse not to share patient information with anyone. So, fine.
Yeah, that's just sort of, isn't that how things are supposed to be?
Yeah, you would think so. Mason runs into Julia, and she assumes he's come to the hospital to support her, but in fact, he says, no, I'm here because Victoria had collapsed. So Julia makes her way into Victoria's room and tries to find out if she is interested in Mason romantically. And they have a fairly long, convoluted conversation in which Julia doesn't come right out and ask that, and Victoria volunteers a lot of information adjacent to the question, and neither of us actually comes out as clear as to Victoria is interested in Mason. But the next thing we see is Julia crying on Lionel's shoulder. So Mason, of course, was aware a couple of weeks ago that he was juggling a lot of things with Julia and Victoria, and seems to be plowing ahead with both, maybe to see where the chips fall. Mason tells Victoria he knows she's pregnant and demands that she admit that Cruz is the father. All I could think of here is that it was none of Mason's business that she's pregnant or who the father is, but Victoria decides to tell him that it is Cruz's.
Now, you see, I was thinking that exact same thing a few weeks ago when she blurted it out to Pearl, and he inserted himself so much into it. So it's interesting how all of these characters who don't really have any particular connection with Victoria have suddenly become a big part of her storyline.
Well, she needs some connections. There's just no family connections in town, so I guess they're trying to cement her into Santa Barbara.
Now, do we know why she has no family connections in town?
Oh, that's true. She probably would have parents there, right?
I thought she grew up there. So.
Someone did make a comment in this episode. Julia says about Victoria, she's forever vanishing and coming back. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we find out what happens to Victoria's parents, why. And I guess she has no siblings either, or cousins, or aunts. Buzz's Christmas tree lot is no longer there. The Christmas trees are gone, but the Christmas lights are still up on that yellow house next to Johnny's. So they're slowly dismantling Christmas on the sets of Santa Barbara. And why are we there? Because Brian tells Jane that he's learned some surprising things about his brother. And Pearl arrives, and Brian thanks him for the gift, and they end up shaking hands. So it seems like they've made up in this. Jane mentions to Brian that she's no longer working at the radio station, but exclusively for Lionel on the dinosaur dig. I mean, she doesn't say this as if it just happened, so it seems like she quit the radio station way back when she joined the dinosaur. But I think re-listening to Haley and Ted talking to Brick about the radio station, it seems like they still have their jobs at the radio station, even though they're helping out Brick to build Johnny's. Brian asks Jane about Roxanne, and she says, it's like a character I used to play. She explains all about it, and Brian says, I hope you never wish that you're anyone else. When you're with me, I like who you are. And just as they are about to kiss, Alice enters and runs away angrily. What are your thoughts on Brian with Jane as a couple?
Well, I don't think we've seen a lot of them as a couple, really.
But but ongoing. So that doesn't really conflict with any hopes and dreams you had, or
No, not really.
yeah, it's right from the beginning. It's kind of indifferent about Brian and Alice getting together since Brian was so clearly over it.
Yeah, and I do think Alice has an admirer in Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. And then there's that new fellow living at the Capwells. He's probably potentially single, so
sure.
got Alice as a potential suitor, and Haley if things go wrong, and Courtney. So we will see who he ends up with. Oh, and that's all the plot for this episode, and there was just a very short, slow credits. So that's it for this Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we watch episode 617, the final episode to air in the year 1986. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
We're planning a New Year's Eve party.
I can't believe that you are stupid enough to try this again. No one would come to your Thanksgiving dinner. You couldn't even bribe people with expensive gifts to be with you at Christmas. Who in the world do you think is going to spend New Year's Eve with you?
Around New Year's Eve, people want to bury the hatchet, wipe the slate clean. Tomorrow night, I want nothing but the spirit of forgiveness and warmth in this house. And if you set one foot inside here, Sophia, I'll call the police and have them take you away for trespassing.
Welcome.
Hello.
This is episode 617 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. And this episode originally aired Wednesday, December 31st, 1986. It is not New Year's Eve yet, though, in Santa Barbara, because we're a day off. Eden tells Sophia that she unintentionally convinced Cruz to return the watch she gave him for Christmas. So that sums up that. Gina is planning a New Year's Eve party tomorrow. Sophia says, I can't believe you're stupid enough to try this again. Who in the world do you think is going to spend New Year's Eve with you? Gina says, tomorrow night I want nothing but the spirit of forgiveness and warmth in this house. And if you show up, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Gina eventually agrees to let Sophia come to the party just to try to get Cece to come there too, because Cece and Sophia have other plans at midnight. Sophia asks Brick to come to the party so he doesn't spend his whole night thinking about Amy. Lionel and Alice talk about Gus and Brian. And she tells Lionel that Brian likes Jane now. Ted and Cece plan to go fishing like they used to when he was a kid. Now, throughout this episode, they're gathering their various fishing hats and things. And Cece has a cold throughout this whole episode. And at first, it's not mentioned, but it starts to be mentioned more and more as the episode goes on. I think maybe they wrote it into the script. Ted tells Cece and Sophia that he now wants to train and breed horses, which Cece thinks is ludicrous. And it's just a flash-in-the-pan idea, like when he wanted to be, I forget what it was, a magician when he was 6 or something like that. But Sophia says that they should give him a chance. And by the end of it, Cece says, okay, he can start in the stables. He's been spreading it out. He can shovel it for a while. Ted decides that working for Cece is not what he wants with the whole, nepotism thing. And after a discussion with Sophia, comes upon a plan to apply to a job at the Abernathy stables because he knows the groomsmen there. Now, Gina tells Haley that she wants Ted and her at the head of the table tomorrow. And Haley says she thinks that she and Ted should move out because Cece is still being an undue influence on Ted. Gina says, you need to stay close to Cece because you're going to need money when you start having a family. And Haley says that Gina was happier when she was living in that scummy motel room.
Mm-hmm.
Ted gets the job and tells Haley the good news. Haley says, you've never mentioned this to me before, which is funny because, of course, Ted has never once mentioned wanting to have anything to do with horses before this episode. And the writers have cleverly had Haley say the lines that we were all thinking in our heads. But I guess that's it for KUSB for Ted.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because even in the first season when there was much made about Channing's prowess as an equestrian. We really didn't hear anything about Ted being at all interested or involved with the horses.
Mm-hmm. At one point, Ted walks in while Cece's yelling at his horse trainer about wasting $60,000 apparently an attempt to create a foal that was done at the wrong time, and they paid for nothing. Ted says, "Oh, he taught me everything I knew, and when I used to hang out at the stables, or he taught me everything he knows." So, Haley thinks he's just taking this job to stick it to Cece, and that leads them to have a very annoying scene where they're both wandering the house, angry at each other, and we get this very weird shot of the set that I've never seen before. And we've both just looked at it again before this episode, and I'll put it up, in a graphic. But I have no idea where that is. Like, the red color makes me think they're downstairs somewhere in the atrium. But what is that arch that Haley is standing next to? And what's on the other side of it? It's not the living room, and they're not in the living room. It's like a weird arch in the middle of the atrium that's maybe pointing to another atrium? I don't know. I mean, if that was the living room, then I'd be very surprised by the brown door at the very end, because I always assumed that's where the windows are that go into the grounds. So I don't know. I'll put it up. If anyone watching thinks they know what angle that's from, please post in the comments. So yeah, I guess this getting a job is maybe good for Cece or for Ted, but it's going to be put a strain on his relationship with Haley again. Gus tells Carolyn that Alice will be lost forever to her because she'll then know that Caroline left Alice alone in the hospital for 6 years. Gus is a bit of an ass, I've decided. He tells her that he thinks that she originally left him because he's black. Then he tries to kiss her, which causes Carolyn to leave. Carolyn tells Lionel that Gus's new apartment reminds her of the seedy places they used to stay when they first lived together. She doesn't bother telling Lionel about the kissing attempt, so I don't think there's any point in that, personally. Cruz tells Santana that he'll visit Danny later. We do not see Danny in this episode, but we do see him at the hospital, having just visited Danny with some positive news on his recovery. Santana asks Cruz if he'll return to the police force when he finishes helping Brick, and we don't get a positive response to that. At the hospital, Cruz runs into Eden, and they have a brief conversation, and then Sophia talks Eden into bringing some guy from prep school to the party tomorrow. So that's where that relationship is. So this might be a bigger party than we first thought, with Brick and the guy from prep school coming.
Well, they didn't get their reunion, so...
That's true. At the end of the episode, they've written Cece's cold in so much that Cece is helped upstairs by Sophia, which causes Gina to yell, "Get away from my husband!" But she's pretty resigned to Cece and Sophia just being together all the time.
Yeah.
And kissing all the time. I guess as long as they don't sleep together, she doesn't get any money. So, and that's it for this episode. Tomorrow is January 1st, so there will be no episode. And Friday we will have what should have been the January 1st episode, or what should have been the December 31st episode, airing on January 2nd. So now we are 2 days behind.
And we just, actually last night, had a sighting of Nick.
Yes, Nick Hartley was on. What do we watch Fridays? Falcon Crest. Yes, Nick Hartley was on Falcon Crest. And we today we're recording on a Saturday, and this weekend I've seen through my Facebook postings that there's some sort of a Dallas reunion / convention going on around South Fork Ranch in the Fort Worth area, I think. And 2 Santa Barbara actors, at least, that I could recall off the top of my head, are in that group that's there. Janine Turner, for some reason, is there. And, of course, we saw her in the early days of Santa Barbara playing herself, I think. I think she had like a minor character in an early season or something. I don't know. And Lee McCluskey, who played, of course, Mitch on Dallas long before he ever joined Santa Barbara. But he'll be appearing in Santa Barbara in a year or 2 or 3. So, yeah, that's fun stuff happening in the world. Anyway, it's very hot in this hat because it's August. So we're going to wrap up this episode, and we'll see you after we've watched episode 618. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just be sure you save tomorrow night for me.
You gotta be joking.
I'm planning a very, very special party for us.
Good. You can ask the gardener, because I'm not going with you. I've got other plans.
Happy New Year! Welcome to episode 618 of Santa Barbara, originally aired Friday, January 2nd, 1987. And this is the last episode of week 127. And thanks to now with a two-day delay, we are celebrating New Year's Eve in Santa Barbara. And FYI, Brandon does not appear in this episode, although he is mentioned. Cece thanks a worker who is putting the last tile back in place in the Capwell atrium. Ooh. So we have been seeing the Capwell living room for the last few weeks, and presumably it's because Lionel has a dinosaur pit in the middle of the living room in the atrium, which we've only seen once or twice. So I'm wondering if they've made some cosmetic changes to the set as well, and this was their excuse, or if they just thought they didn't have room for an atrium and a living room, and this was their excuse to just show the living room with the Christmas tree in it for the last little while. Cece is, of course, still sick, and this is now a major part of this episode, so either they massively rewrote it, or Cece's cold, or Jed Allen's cold just happened to coincide with Cece's. Or he's a really good actor because he was really coughing in the last couple episodes. Cece tells Marie to take down Gina's decorations. Gina tells her to put them back up. Sophia tells her that Cece's temperature is up again, but Gina thinks he's faking it to get out of the party and ruin it. Sophia pops Gina's balloons. Gina fills up Cece's bedroom with steam. Sophia finds his temperature is over 100 and opens the windows. She mentions being worried about Kelly's kidnap plot, which is inching forward now that Robin Wright is back on the show. Presumably, this will happen once this New Year's Eve stuff is out of the way.
I'm wondering about February sweeps.
That'd be a long time to keep Kelly on her own.
It would, but, if they're going to do this insane kidnapping plot, I feel like it's going to be really revving up and going wrong during February sweeps.
Well, we will see. Brick tells Sophia about a tradition that Amy had on New Year's Eve. She would write a letter containing thanks for the previous year and hopes for the next, and then opening all them on the following New Year's Eve. Brick says he's been walking past that drawer, avoiding the envelope. Sophia says maybe she can take over that tradition and tells him that she's thankful she found a son she never knew she had. It's kind of hard to remember that this all happened in the last year. Purgatory seems to be a new nightclub in Santa Barbara. I was very confused as to where everyone was for a while. I thought, is that the Orient Express dressed for New Year's? But no, Santana, Brick, and Cruz are at Purgatory, and they plan to come back later after they get changed to ring in the new year. Looks like no one's going to Gina's party. Brick tells Cruz to bring a date. Brick and Santana invite Sophia to join them. Sophia tells Cece and tells him that, of course, she's going to stay with him. But he says, no, you go ahead. I'll pass my germs on to Gina instead. Sophia says, I don't think the common cold is good enough for her. Maybe the bubonic plague is. I'm going to find a flea-ridden rat that's looking for a good time. Gina closes Cece's window, and she tells him that she's canceled the party, and then tries to get into bed with him. He falls asleep. Julia finds Mason working in his office. She's brought champagne to celebrate the good news that the doctor says there's nothing wrong with her. They should be able to get pregnant easily. But he is working, and he's got a bunch of stuff that needs to get done by midnight. Later, he decides to leave and go visit Victoria at the hospital instead.
So much for work.
Eden finds out Victoria is in the hospital and visits her. Victoria tries desperately to get her to leave her room. Eden tries to steal Victoria's medical files. Danny, who does not appear in this episode, tells Cruz there is a movie star in the hospital, and Cruz realizes it must be Victoria and finds her. She tells him she's moving back to Santa Barbara on Mason's recommendation. Cruz tries to find out what's wrong with Victoria from Mason. Now, I skipped over it, but at some point, Santana gets wind that Gina's busy and goes to visit Brandon and spends about 10 minutes with him at the gazebo. But this is all happening off screen. It's all just dialogue between Santana and Sophia. The doctor prescribes minimal activity for Victoria, so Mason says he'll make arrangements for her. So I feel like this is going to be taking up a lot of his time now. Not just taking care of Victoria, but hiding the fact that she's pregnant with Cruz's baby. And of course, at some point, they will have to reveal she's pregnant. So my theory that maybe he pretends they've been dating this whole time and it's his might
Maybe.
be. Brick invites Julia to the party at Purgatory, saying no one should be alone on New Year's Eve, which gives Julia the idea that Mason is working alone in his office. So she goes to his office to ring in the new year with him and finds that he has left. She doesn't know that he's, of course, gone to visit Victoria for the duration, so she decorates his office and ends up ringing in midnight on her own in Mason's office. Mason shows up in Victoria's room at 2 minutes to midnight with non-alcoholic champagne. Cruz, Brick, Santana, and Sophia are all at Purgatory partying when Eden arrives with her date, Edward. Cruz watches Eden dancing with Edward. Eden tells Sophia that her date is a dud. Cruz walks out when Edward kisses Eden at midnight.
She's still having more fun than Julia, though.
That's true. Cruz is pretty miserable. Yeah, it'd be nice if we could formalize if Brick and Santana are actually dating. We'll see how things go. That is it for this episode. Very surprise rug pull on the big Capwell New Year's Eve party that we all thought was happening. And once again, they've done this thing where they tease us with this big thing for several days. It's going to happen, and then it's just canceled in a half a line of dialogue.
I'm assuming the reunion has come and gone and none of our main characters went.
Yeah, because it's December now.
Yeah, you'd usually have a reunion, in August or maybe early September, I would think.
Yeah. Speaking of reunion, we haven't seen Keith in a while, or at least it seems like it.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, watching this episode.
And I guess Courtney was not invited to Purgatory, and Lily was not invited to something, or maybe she was coming to that party that was canceled. Pearl, not invited to Purgatory. I guess Brian and Alice and the Lockridge gang are having their own New Year's. We'll maybe find that out in the next episode. We had a full cast credits, no change from the other day. And Dr. Ballard is played by John Mansfield. This is one of his 6 appearances as Dr. Ballard. His first being in episode 606. Or is it 616? Oh, now I gotta double check.
He seemed to be making the most of his little appearance. He kind of comes in, sits down on her bed. He was really trying to draw out his few lines.
616, 618, possibly 617. And then he returns in 701 and leaves in 714. So he's got 2 little little stints. And Edward is played by Tony Cummings. No idea if he's anyone famous. I didn't look up his IMDb. I don't even know if he appears in my list of appearances, because I only listed people who are in 2 or more episodes. So, let's see, 6. Nope. Nope. So that's a one-off, I guess, for Edward, I think. Or he just didn't make it into the credits because of the way the credits are done for the next episode. All right, that is it for week 127. We flew a long way to get this week recorded for you. Now it's back to just sweating in August in Vancouver as we record the first week of January in Santa Barbara. We'll see you when we start week 128. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Go enjoy yourself. I don't want you staying around here picking up germs. That'd be better passed to my devoted wife, Gina.
Okay, not a bad idea. If I thought you were really that contagious, I'd tell you to kiss her.
That far will not go, even to infect that woman. Besides, I don't think a common cold is good enough for her. Maybe a bubonic plague is.
I'm going to find a flea-ridden rat who's looking for a good time.
I brought Victoria Lane, so I brought her in to be checked out.
She's really funny, you know. She keeps forever vanishing and coming back.
Brick tells Sophia about a tradition Amy had on New Year's Eve. Oh no.
I've lost my hat.
Lost your festive hat.
I told you.
Oh, it's so loose.
Yeah.
It gets so loose.
That's from being you were the last one wearing it.
I know, my head must have been big for a day. Well, that won't work. That's odd. Why is it so loose?
Maybe we could put it up.
I mean, I could just tie it.
Just put it in the front.
I could just tie it. Like that. That's bizarre. Never seen an elastic. Oh, that's something. All right. Where were we? Let's start over because I messed that up anyway. Brick tells Sophia.